We are live now.
Recording live,
Yes.
live at the time,
Yes.
as Dimitri Martin says. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm Tim Kirk, here with Beth Weathers. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
She's over in the control room, and I think you can see her, but I'm not sure. Can they see you, Beth?
You will work on it, but
Okay. Sorry about that. I had the disco ball set up in there for you, but apparently the light bulb burned out. I didn't realize that. Sorry. So today, I've mentioned it before that Beth is an expert on almost everything.
correct.
And makes for very interesting conversation. So I'm very excited to find out what it is we're going to talk about today because she hasn't even told me. Beth, what's on the docket for today?
Well, I could swing the range from treasure hunting to veteran suicide. I mean, I really both of those things are pretty
Near and dear to
strong
your heart.
passions to me,
Yeah.
and
Okay, so tell me what's the latest in the treasure hunting world.
search season is getting ready to start. It hasn't quite started yet for obvious reasons. There's snow still in Yellowstone. It's, if you're searching in Yellowstone, there's snow still there. It's 30 degrees at night.
Which, as we all know, if you're searching in Yellowstone, you're unclear on the concept.
Right, and you are incorrect. But go ahead and keep searching there.
Yeah, please. Do us all a favor. All you noobs out there, start with Yellowstone. And don't go anywhere else until you've searched every square inch.
But for the sake of everyone's safety, which is really important because so many people have hurt themselves or died,
Yeah, there's that.
it is important to have, rules. Like, don't go out when everything's frozen and
Live with the legs, not with the back.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's a season. So it's almost like a sporting event, where like they've got to let the thaw happen, let the runoff happen, and then the trails and stuff are accessible in these mountainous areas. And in some places, that's not until July or August, right?
Right. And you're also talking about people often that are not physically fit, are not used to being out in the elements.
Yeah, no.
Not used to climbing
crazy.
things that, maybe they shouldn't be climbing, and adding rain, ice. Those are all just, I think he's just being very cautious with his searchers. Like, they're not all outdoorsmen. They're not all, seasoned.
Right. And once again, his admonishment of applying the 80-year-old man rule, right? That
Right.
basically, if you're climbing on something, walking through something, crawling under something that an 80-year-old man couldn't do, burdened with at least a 25-pound pack, you're probably in the wrong spot.
Right.
Which begs the question, how do they know they're in the right spot? If that's how you know you're in the wrong spot, how do you know you're in the right spot?
That's a good question. I think I think you will know you're in the right spot before you leave your house. That is my opinion. It remains my opinion the last 3 years that you're going to know. When you leave your computer or wherever you're searching, you're going to know where you're going.
Right, and that really suggests that the solution to this poem is far more deterministic than just you follow clue 1, and that leads you to clue 2, and that leads you to clue 3. I mean, there's got to be something written in there that gives everyone a great deal of confidence whenever they do finally solve it. It's like, aha, eureka, and there it is on the map, right?
I think that maybe both of those things could be contained, point 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, but at 9, you're going to know what you're doing. That's my opinion.
Yeah, when you cross the finish line, there won't be any,
Yeah.
gee, I wonder if the treasure's going to be there. It's like the moment.
Exactly.
The clouds part, sunshine comes down, the little Monty Python God comes out, and there's great rejoicing.
Right. Over the last year or two, I have decided that based on my own searches where I've gone out and kind of winged it, realizing the emotions that get involved, kind of the anxiety, the adrenaline that starts to pump, all of those things, I think that he has also factored into the person that is actually solving this, because I think he understands what adrenaline does to a body based on
his fighter pilot experience, if nothing else.
exactly
Right.
And it's a thing when you're at those last moments and you think that you're right, your adrenaline kicks in and you can make a really dumb decision really quickly.
Oh yeah.
And I think that he's factored that in. I honestly do. So that again speaks to you know where you're going. You'll be a little more prepared.
Yeah, people call it boots on the ground, or as we like to say, botog. Yeah, how many botog trips have you been on, do you think, Beth? 2, 3, 100?
5 solid ones. I mean, I've gone a few times that would be considered like recon, where I've gone to just learn more about the area, learn more about Forrest Fenn,
right?
See his gallery. I wanted to see that for myself and what sculptures he put in his garden. How he built that. He built that gallery. I wanted to see what was important to him. That's how you learn about who he is, and there's no better way than a house he lived in for a long time.
Right. And that's where you and I come from the same school of thought, in that it's not so much about solving the poem as it is solving the man.
Right.
Sure, you need to solve the poem, but in order to get the right angle on the poem, you really have to solve the man, right? And what you're talking about with understanding his artistic inclinations,
right,
his apparent motivations and how he sets things up, and his life experience.
And his the things he's a little bit odd with,
What? Odd? No.
When he shows his little freak flag a little bit, that's what you need to be paying attention to, I think.
Right, because he is an eccentric man.
He is.
I mean, no doubt about it. He's a true artist in every sense of the word. In the poem that he took 15 years to architect, I think demonstrates his artistic side, in that he uses words almost as if he has a thesaurus in one hand and his computer keyboard on the other, right?
I would also throw it out there, and it's not spoken about very much, but not only do I think he's an artist, but I think that he may be a secret closeted musician. So,
tell us about that.
That's a whole other conversation.
A closeted musician.
I do think that along with poetry and his love of poetry, I mean, that goes very hand in hand with writing music. It wouldn't surprise me if he... he's just a very creative person, and it's that outlet is very similar. Poems into music lyrics, and it's something I've just searched a little bit on, but there's enough there, I think.
Yeah, I've noticed that you never see Forrest Fenn and Slash from Guns N' Roses in the same place at the same time. Have you ever noticed that? I have a sneaking suspicion that hair with the top hat is all cover, and that's Forrest Fenn.
Maybe.
Rocking them.
You know what? Maybe. If anybody could do that.
I know, right? No, I hear what you're saying. He, it makes for an interesting examination of the man, because I think, once again, in order to understand the poem, you have to understand at least a preponderance of the man. We probably will never fully know him, if he's ever been known. His family probably is in the best position to evaluate that. But he is one of these guys who's so much more talented and so much smarter than the average cat, but maybe doesn't have all the trappings that would indicate that. So, for example, in the first chapter of his book, Thrill of the Chase, where he's talking about and almost comparing himself to F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway. He's got kind of this tongue-in-cheek comparison of his own aptitude and talent that I think belies what's really underneath the surface, right? I mean, he kind of plays this like, I never went to college and got all that book learning, but in fact, you're dealing with someone who's on a genius level on par with, if not beyond, Fitzgerald and Hemingway.
I think that he's throwing Fitzgerald and Hemingway out because those are very common, average college,
Mm-hmm.
but he's actually working in Aristotle,
Mm-hmm.
Plato,
Mm-hmm.
like bigger
Right.
Philosophers. That's in him.
Right. And I get that too from his advocacy of Catcher in the Rye. I'm not convinced that he really thinks that Salinger is as good as he makes him out to be, because let's face it, Salinger's not as great as they make him out to be. But I digress. But you know what I mean? It's like he's got this otherworldly genius just evident in the fact that he lines those three authors up, right? And then his talks about Robert Redford, if he ever wrote a book. Well, he did write a book, didn't he? And it's like, if you read it at face value, you would think Forrest Fenn doesn't know that Robert Redford wrote a book.
Right.
But in fact, he most certainly does. And it's probably a reference to something to do with Thrill of the Chase. But you can't. It's emblematic of the fact that you cannot take Forrest Fenn at face value.
You can take him at face value if you understand Forrest Fenn completely.
Right. That's what I mean. Is if you read, that
right.
passage, and while he's right that Ernest Hemingway, meh, but his other stuff, almost deifying J.D. Salinger, and then apparently missing an important fact about Robert Redford, don't take those at face value.
Right.
No one needs to sit him down and say, now, Forrest, Robert Redford actually did put together a little something.
Wasn't... Oh, I'm thinking something else. Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, what?
I was going to say, wasn't Robert Redford just recently, but it wasn't. It was Kevin Costner, put up for an award at the Buffalo Bill Cody. I think that's where it was, just last week.
Oh, really? No, I hadn't heard that. I did, however, watch Robert Redford in Avengers Endgame. And there will not be any spoilers here, even though we've officially passed the spoiler line.
I didn't even know he was still alive. So.
Yeah, he's... Unless that was old, footage that they used in the movie, it's entirely possible. But he was in the credits, so I assume he's still alive.
I do have the book, the Robert Redford book. I haven't read it yet. But
What? He wrote a book?
He did.
What? Tell us what it's about.
I got it on eBay. I've got a giant stack of books that, Forrest, that is one thing that if you start going through and listing all the books that he references and trying to buy them, you're going to come up with...
You're going to spend a pretty penny.
You are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and interestingly, the analysis has been done, and probably isn't common knowledge on the boards and so forth, but if you take all the books that he references there, including the one that he doesn't reference with Robert Redford, and you overlay them, you get a cross-section, a Venn diagram, if you will, and the intersection of those books serves as a clue to some people as to where they should be looking, right? And we hope you keep looking there. Stay in Wyoming. Just stay in Wyoming.
I mean, there's a whole book team. Like, there's a whole book theory, and I pursued it for a little while, not very long, but even small stories that he has in his book, such as the Giant Ball of String story.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that
one?
one?
Of course.
I'm
no commie.
If you run down that Giant Ball of String story, there's actually a children's book back, I don't want to say 30s, 40s. I'm not good on my facts there, but there is a book. And that's, I mean, I think it's actually called Big Ball String or something like.
Yeah.
You can try to solve his poem through books, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of people trying.
You're right. There's a whole school of thought that the chase is a literary one. And that while there is a physical dimension to it, in the sense that there's a treasure box out there, that the fact that Fenn starts Thrill the Chase in a bookstore, and
that bookstore is a recipient of, the proceeds.
Right.
It's a nice bookstore. It's not like any really other bookstore that's successful these days. So,
right.
And they're very careful about what books they're putting in there. It's a very nice bookstore.
Yeah. And the fundamental theory is that there's a literary dimension to the chase, that you have to go out, get these books, analyze them, understand them, and even, as you pointed out, discover books that whole stories or chapters in Thrill the Chase refer obliquely to something else. For example, Too Far to Walk. I don't know, did you know that that's a book that was written by what award did he win? I think it was a Pulitzer or a Peabody or something, the author of it.
Same title.
Yeah, Too Far to Walk, back in the 60s.
But then I would
Horrible
contradict
book.
myself on this book theory, because I don't think he wants you to go spend $700 in books that you bought on eBay over the course of
Right.
2 years.
Well, that begs the question, is he sincere when he says the book, Thrill the Chase, will give you hints, references, it'll illuminate your understanding, but it's the poem that's necessary. In other words, he seems to indicate, if we take him at his word in this regard, that the books don't do anything about giving you the location. They help you understand maybe the context of the clues, or the context of,
Right.
Where that mindset exists. But you can't do like some people do and overlay the books and say, okay, the Venn diagram gives us a space this big, it must be inside that space. At least that's my impression.
I think the poem is absolutely the one thing that you have to concentrate on. And I've been thinking more recently, we had a discussion about the pictures the other day. I won't get into that top secret information, but I was thinking along the lines of what you were implying. And all of those things in the book that he hints about helping you could just be critical thinking practice.
Right.
I mean, examining, analyzing things, questioning what's, on face value.
Yeah, there's no doubt that is part of his thinking or agenda. If you think about the fact that, there was this woman who wrote in to Forrest and said, hey, I'm reading this. I don't even know where to begin. I read your poem. It doesn't make any sense to me. I can't even get on the map with your poem. Can you help me out? You remember this? And he referred her to a YouTube page about learning something new every day. Do you remember this?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is where the relearning to ride a bike thing came from.
Yes, the backwards.
Yeah,
bicycle.
riding a backwards bicycle. So he tells her, listen, the problem that a lot of people have is that they have a way of thinking. Their brain is conditioned to think a certain way. And in order to break out of that, you've got to basically reformulate the cognitive patterns in your mind. And he uses as an example a YouTube page where this guy learns something new every day. But his first video is about learning to ride a backwards bicycle. And what that means is he rigged the steering mechanism on the bicycle, not Forrest, but the guy in the video, so that if you turn the handlebars left, the front wheel turns right, and vice versa. So the steering is exactly backwards from where you'd expect it to be. And he gets on it and tries to ride it and immediately falls flat on his face.
Right.
And it takes him 2 months, basically 8 weeks to, if I remember correctly, it's 8 weeks, maybe it's longer, to be able to ride this thing without Biff in it. But then he gives it to his son, who's like 12 years old, and it takes him 8 days to get it. And then another guy who's he's one of these Tony Hawk types, skateboarder, X Games type athlete. And he gets it down in almost no time at all. And it's illustrative of the fact that conditioning your mind for brain plasticity, basically the fact that your brain can learn to do things in entirely new ways, but you have to condition your brain to do that. And that young people who haven't had years and years of reinforcement of one way of thinking, or people who do things like X Game skateboarding, who are so involved in trying new things that their brain is just constantly in learn new things mode. And I think the point there is that if you look at this at face value, once again, you're going to get it wrong, because Forrest wants us to challenge our ability to learn new things.
I think he wants us to think. If there were one word to sum it up, I think he wants us to think differently than we think. I think he hints at that when he asks you to wake up an hour early and essentially meditate. Think about your day. Think about your chase.
Right.
I think that's what he wants, a thinker.
Yeah. Imagination is better than knowledge. Right. And that's probably one of the most enigmatic aspects to this whole thing is a lot of people presume that they can think differently or they're really smart, especially people just starting out. And they think, oh, I've got it. I mean, you can see them all the time on the boards, right? Where it's like, hey, I just picked this up 2 weeks ago and I've got it figured out. Can't wait for the weekend. I'm going to go out and find it. Sorry, losers. I'm out here to take your treasure, And then 2 months later, they've totally given up.
I have started to spend more time thinking about the ways I'm not thinking than I have thought about the actual details of the chase, because that is what is missing there. He said it. There's something that some people are not thinking about, or
yeah. And a lot of people write to Forrest and say, hey, thank you, we found the treasure. The treasure wasn't your box. The treasure was me and my kids going out into the woods and getting off the couch or whatever. And I think that is absolutely true. I think I'm on number 6 now for my Botog trips. I haven't been to as many places as you have, I don't think, but I've been to a couple times. Same place a couple times. It changes your life.
It changes, it flushes energy, and it's good stuff, so...
Yeah, and it's humbling. I mean, it's like when you're sitting here in an air-conditioned room looking at a map, got the poem, and you're like, bam, I got it figured out like those noobs do. And then you get out there into the wilderness, and it's just like, I do not got it at all. This is crazy.
Well, it's also humbling physically, and that's, I've lost almost 100 pounds in the last 5 years. And my first search, and I still have some to go. That's good. My very first search was, I narrowed myself down. I knew where I was going. I was so confident. I was looking at things from Google Earth. I thought I understood the landscape. You do not understand the landscape until you put your feet on the landscape, no matter how much you look at Google Earth. And arriving there to my location and realizing, if my location was right, the physical fitness I needed to get to my spot was severely lacking. Like, I was going to have to go, and I did start. I got a personal trainer. I decided, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to change who I am physically to even accomplish this end stage.
Right. No, I totally get it. You look at Google Earth and you're like, oh, you started here and it ends here.
Well, there's like a path.
Yeah, that's not a path. That's up, down, up, down, up, down. And it may look like it's a mile, but that's as the crow flies. And you will not be flying.
And then you don't factor in the heat. New Mexico. It was summer. Yeah, no,
Take
it was,
water.
I was so optimistic going there the first time and realizing the actual physical problems that was an eye opener. But it also is life changing. It is.
Yeah.
It's humbling in that way, like what you were saying. It's humbling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had a pretty big ego about this solution, but what I don't have is any stamina at all
Right.
to get over there to that box.
And when you finally get on top of, the first mountain or whatever, and it's not there, and you look over and you see the bigger mountain, and you're like, oh man, I hope it's not up that one, because I had to kill myself to get to the top of this one. Yeah, it's that's what I like about it, is that it's humbling in a number of ways, especially, as it begins to dawn on you just how complex a problem this is. I mean, when you look at it on paper, there are 9 clues. The first one's this, figure it out, and you've got the treasure. Sounds great. But when you get out there where all the variables are in play, the possibilities are infinite, literally infinite.
It is. It's a genius thing that he's done.
Yeah.
I fully believe that when he says 100 to 200 years, he initially really, really wanted that to be the case.
Sure.
Because because of the level of complication, the level of possibilities you can find in simply the word brown or
Capital B Brown.
right. But I think he's since changed his opinion about the length of the chase.
Yeah. What's your sense there?
I think he did not expect 2018-19 technology, the kind of level of crazy that people can become. I think that
Right.
his family and his personal home have been.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of feelings about that, but yeah, and I can't think that in any way, shape, or form that this is what he's said. We've talked about legacy for a long time. This is not the legacy he wants to leave to his children and grandchildren.
Right.
The kind of the mania, the crazy,
Sure.
the crazies.
Yeah.
And not being here to affect any kind of change.
Right.
For them, I think that is weighing on him heavily. Yet his personal integrity also plays into it. He doesn't want to go back on his words. He wants to. I think he just wants it done. That's
Right. He's made his point. He's ready to get off the stage. Yeah, I get the same sense in terms of he may romanticize about the 1,000-year thing. But as you point out, I don't think the implications of that really ever hit him early on, because it really did metastasize into something that it wasn't at first.
right.
At first, it was kind of a cool New Mexico thing, right? Like any sort of Lost Dutchman mine or Seven Cities of Cibola type legendary appeal or whatnot. It was cool. But as it got bigger and it went from, Thrill of the Chase just says it's in the mountains north of Santa Fe. Then it became the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe, which then opened it up to everywhere.
Right.
And he had to say, no, it's not in Idaho, it's not in Utah, just to narrow it down a little bit because, the mania that you described.
Well, he has no ability to predict human behavior in the next, say, 15 years. I mean, look where we've come in the.
Yeah.
I don't think that he saw it coming. I mean, I think he's very tech savvy. I think he's very aware of all of those things. But I do not think he saw the YouTube channels, the ability for our phones to do what they do so quickly. Can you imagine what they're going to be doing in 10 years? I mean, he has. I'm a grandmother. I'm a mother. If I put myself in his position, no way do I want to have essentially, and I hate to say it the way I'm going to say it, but essentially a bounty on my grandchildren and children's heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an unlimited liability because of the unimaginable potential of crazy.
Right.
Because people, as you say, a bounty, you always have to think about the kidnappers, the ransom,
the Axeman,
yeah.
And you know what? Also, God bless those people. Like, I hope they're getting the help they need. I understand the balance of falling with, one step over reality and, losing perspective. I feel all of those things, but I also feel his perspective of I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, great grandfather, maybe. I just don't see it lasting much longer for that reason.
Right. So we're just going to have to get out there and find it.
Correct.
The gauntlet is thrown down. Yeah. A lot of people thought it would happen last year. Because didn't Forrest say something about he had a gut feeling? Yeah, exactly. And when it didn't happen, everyone's just standing there going...
Now, do you think when he says stuff like I have a gut feeling, it's because somebody is messaging him and telling him how close they are? Or that's kind of that's my gut feeling.
Yeah, my gut feeling is your gut feeling is correct. No, I don't know for sure because he could be playing at a couple of different things. One, it could be that someone's emailing him saying, Forrest, I can see your treasure box from here, but I can't climb, to get it. And there's that possibility. The other possibility I consider is that he is intensifying the pursuit by telling everyone, ooh, someone's getting close. I got a gut feeling it's going to happen. And that urges everyone on. The conversations I find on Reddit to be the most interesting at times are the lead searcher concepts that get floated about. I was forced to post on Reddit myself and reveal publicly that I am officially the tail searcher. So I'm the last one, and if anyone else drops anything along the way, I'll be the last to know, and I'll be sure and pick it up for them. But yeah, it's like the mythos of the lead searcher kind of took on a life of its own once that gut feeling thing translated into speculation that there was some group or person that had nailed it, and they were just, within closing distance of getting it.
I will tell you a little bit about my weirdness is last December when I saw kind of what was happening with the danger that his personal space has. I sent him an email telling him how I thought that he could reduce some of the, the frenzy by publishing an actual lead searcher list, not in a ranking order or, but he knows. If you are a searcher that is communicating with him at all and you've thrown out your idea, you're either right or you're close to right or you're really wrong. He knows who those people are.
Right.
And I think that would be a way to bring in. You would hyper focus the people that are on that list,
right?
Because they know that something they're thinking is
spot on,
right? And then you would kind of de-escalate the people that are wrong, but are kind of in this frenzy of I'm going to show up at his house, and he didn't take me up on that plan yet, but it's a solid one.
I think it's a good plan, and it certainly would address the issue that you described
while keeping the chase alive.
Right. I think doing that in and of itself defeats one of the major security layers, if you will. If you think of this as the poem as encryption and security layers as defense against finding the location. One of the security layers to this thing is that there is no confirmation. So, for example, the other treasure hunt that lasted only a couple of years, it was the golden sphere of that magician. I can't remember his name. But anyway, it was a series of, I think, like 12 clues that you had to solve. But with each iteration of clue, as you move further down, it was like a collective effort. The whole community of searchers could confirm. They could go to that place and confirm that that is correct. So you knew that you had hacked hint 1.
Right.
You knew that you had hacked hint 2. And it was that collective realization that by the time it necked down to the final clue, when the person who found the treasure actually put their hands on it for the first time, the area had been dug up, searched, torn apart. Everyone else knew where that was because of this cascading confirmation that happened with the clues. In Finn's poem, it is a confirmation-less exercise until the very end. So you have to get all 9 right to find the treasure, and the only way you know that you've been right on any of them is your hands on the treasure. Right. So if he publishes a list, even if it's a top 100 list or something, it gives confirmation to certain schools of thought, to, if someone's a literary interpretation person and another person's an encryption person and another one's a hardcore, no, it's out there in Yellowstone person, publishing a list like that would necessarily eliminate some of those schools of thought and confirm others.
I think when he's pressed against, like the New Mexico sheriff that asked him to shut down the chase because of people being losing their lives, mm-hmm. I think when he is under the pressure of that, I think that's kind of a way for him to stay in the game, yet kind of decrease the frenzy.
Right.
And hopefully everyone is much more safe this year, and
right.
where nothing like that happens again. But I don't know personally how I think of it as a sport. If everyone were out hunting or riding 4-wheelers and
right.
they were injured, I don't think he's liable in that sense. But I do think he's a good man, and he doesn't want searchers out losing their lives. He doesn't.
Well, and let's face it, statistically, you have a better chance of being killed by lightning while in a swimming pool than you have of dying on, the thrill of the chase. The problem is, and when you look at some of these, like I look very closely at the people who lost their lives, they weren't that far from losing their lives in many other ways. You know what I mean? Like the last one, there's even a really good, I think it's questionable whether or not the guy died while looking for Forrest Finn's treasure. He may have been talking about it. He may have been with friends that were talking about it, but it also looked like some drug-addled guys who could easily get in a shooting match over where the last stash of H is located. So the idea of his liability in any of this, to me, is laughable. Like you said, if you're talking about whitewater rafting or cliff diving or mountain biking, far more people lose their lives every year doing those types of things.
I went rafting last summer down the Salt River, and for fun, under the supervision of a company that did that, and nearly died. And
mm-hmm.
That was on me. I chose to do that. And plenty of people, if you look at the Salt River and the people that are drowning because they're tubing, that number is really high. So no, I agree.
It is clearly the fault of that TV show, right. Land of the Lost, where they go over the falls and into the Land of the Lost. They portrayed whitewater rafting as only resulting in dinosaurs and slee stacks. Oh, okay. They didn't show the death part, so it's their fault.
Well, it's legit.
Yeah, I figured out a long time ago that you can't drown to death if you don't get in the water. So consider that one.
If you don't float over rapids.
Don't get in a boat. Don't wade out in the water. Just stay on dry land and you'll be fine.
If we go back to weather, which is kind of where we started on, if you're searching right now, I'm going to Yellowstone, not searching this weekend, but I was checking out the weather.
Not searching.
No, not searching. No.
Not searching.
But
the rest of you should definitely go to Yellowstone and search.
Right. But I was checking out the weather. There's snow everywhere. It's 30-something degrees at night. And if you're a person that thinks that water is involved and you're going to have to hike across some water, you're going to be hiking across some freezing cold water at this moment. And
but my effort will be worth the cold.
I'm not sure that cold.
Yeah, we laugh about that because I think we share the interpretation that of the 80-year-old man rule that this does not require
Right.
heavy-duty mountaineering or...
No, I actually think we'll all be very surprised how, like, you might pull up your car and walk 10 feet and get back in your car. I mean...
Right. Could be.
I mean... I don't really think that that's the solution, but I do think it can be very simple like that.
Yeah. Yeah, which brings us to the point of, we kind of talked about it before. What's the expectation? Like, if we had to give advice, let's say we have some noobs watching who haven't been Botox before, what kind of advice would you give someone who's considering going out this summer and doing a search?
Make sure you have enough money to do it. That's my very first, because it's expensive. I'm just coming from Arizona. I mean, and it's still, for 5 days, it's still sometimes a couple $1,000s,
Sure.
Don't put your family's finances, don't put your food on your table at risk. If you're going as a vacation, plan it out as a vacation, with the budget for a vacation. But that's number one. I just think that don't do that. Don't put yourself in debt over it.
Right. No, that's an important point.
Yeah. And I think maybe some people are. I mean,
although statistically speaking, I've done the math. If you spend anything less than $22,000, statistically, you have a ways to go. The break-even point for a statistically...
Have you done the math on that?
Yeah, well, it's Vegas math, right? So it's... If you haven't spent $22,000 looking for the treasure, you haven't tried hard enough, basically, is what the math says. So, all that just to say, you're right. The potential for spending lots of money is there. But statistically speaking, Vegas says go.
Okay. I think other... know your search area really well. Don't expect to show up there and then realize that your spot is another 5,000 feet in elevation.
Right.
You don't have the right shoes. The weather is different than what you think it is. Just the prepared aspect of it, for sure. I mean, this last time we went, I did not check the weather. We ended up having to buy all new clothing because we were so unprepared. I mean, we live in Arizona. We're now in Colorado at this point, and it's cold and it's snowing on us. And, we have to go. We get hoodies and gloves and boots, and that's another $500 right there just because we're not prepared when we left the house.
Right.
That's
good advice. Area. That's good advice.
What else? Go with an open spirit, like to have fun first. I mean,
yeah, I think that's my biggest advice too. Is understand that the odds of you finding the treasure on a Botox, statistically, based on everyone who's gone out, is zero.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the historical performance of searchers, your chances of finding the treasure when you go out, the odds, the probability of you finding it is zero. If you begin it from that standpoint, it's like buying a lottery ticket. You're not going to win. The odds of 1 in 500 million are so close to the odds of 0 in 500 million that you might as well just embrace the zero. And that way, your expectations are framed in a way that to do what you're talking about, which is to enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the time with your family, enjoy the time sleeping out under the stars, or just the pictures that you're going to
most
bring
people
home.
will find that once I think it's a clear moment the thrill of the chase is an actual feeling. It is the feeling that you had when you're 8 years old and you were carefree and you're just running from place to place and like nothing else was on your mind but what was on your mind right there at the moment.
Right.
That's what you should capture. That's what you, I mean.
Yeah.
For yourself, for your family.
Yeah. If you ruin it with real expectations of finding that treasure and then be disappointed based upon those, you'll miss the point.
You
which
will
I think
cross
is
the thrill completely out of it.
Exactly. And that's where I completely agree. After a handful of trips out myself, it's easy to lose perspective because you are spending money and you are spending effort and time and cognitive resources. But that's okay. That's more a natural state of man than sitting on the couch and watching Netflix.
Good. That made my heart happy. That is so true. Like,
right?
It's exactly what it is. It's just a natural state.
Right. We don't have to forage for food anymore. We don't have to hunt wild game or pick berries to survive. But that's for, since before recorded human history, that's been the natural state of man. And only in the past 200-300 years has that changed substantively with technology and modern society. So getting back to that kind of bare basics, you versus nature, figure it out, deal with it, / not get what you're looking for. That's a very natural state.
Well, and reflecting back to being 6, 7, 8, we were just parented differently then. We had a fairgrounds that had beautiful landscaping and lakes, and we would just leave and run, the grass, climb the trees, sit inside of the water, and we'd fish, or we'd try to figure out how to get to the other side of the water, and we'd figure out what we were doing with what we had. Were there sticks? Was there a log? Was there a big rock? Like, how are we getting living in that mindset of in the moment, with nature, how are we accomplishing something? It's just pure and innocent. I don't know. It's just that's totally the very same thing when you're on boots on the ground and you're in the thrill part of the chase, is that you're having to react on the spot. You're having to look at your environment, what nature is giving you, and react off of that. It's primal almost in a way, and it definitely connects you to childhood energy. Yeah. At least it does for me. I mean, immediately, it's one of the most relaxing things that I've been a part of is chasing a theory that's completely wrong, and I'll be the first person at the end of the day to tell you, wow,
right,
really off. But I mean, there are worse hobbies, and that's a pretty good one.
I completely agree, and the ability to say with intellectual integrity, "Yep, I was wrong," is an important human dimension to life that oftentimes gets insulated out of existence, where there are, in our modern lives, so few moments where you're completely tested in a binary fashion, completely right or completely wrong, and you have to spend so much effort to get to that question.
Right.
The chase provides a very refining activity of you get out there and realize your limitations, confronted by your limitations, confronted by the fact that you are completely wrong.
When you started thinking that you were completely right.
Exactly.
Like you were so right that no one can tell you differently.
That's right.
You believe it in your core that you're so right. So then you have to look at yourself in the face in the mirror to see how wrong you really were.
Right. And that is one of the greatest signs of maturity, I think, in the human existence and condition, is the ability to have the intellectual honesty to say, wow, I was really wrong. And I put a lot of effort into that, and it didn't turn out. And that's okay. It's like very few people in modern life are confronted by their limitations and by that reality. And when it's all video games and internet, right and wrong don't really come to fruition. You've got another life continue the game, or there's a cheat that will get you back into the game where you left it. That's not the real world. And so it's a very healthy maturation experience for both young people and adults alike to be able to get out there and be confronted by their own limitations. And that's something that
just admitting you're wrong, like in life, is hard.
Right.
Like, I'm a right fighter by nature anyway, so pulling your husband out of bed at 1 a.m. telling him you're going to Colorado and let's pack a car, and because you're so right, you're ready to make that commitment.
Right.
And then realizing 12 days later that you've had the time of your life, but you are really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you in real life to just be able to identify when you're wrong, and it makes it easier to say, "Oh, I'm wrong," or
Right.
"I was wrong."
Right.
And it's part of, you're right, it's part of maturity.
Yeah, it's part of being a healthy adult, which I think we may be a little short of these days in America. I'm not sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's healthy, and that's why some of the greed, avarice, and negativity that enters into the chase at times, I really think is unfortunate, because ultimately, searchers are not competitors. Searchers are not ultimately at odds. But in fact, we were all given this opportunity to share in this maturation experience, like it or not. It's kind of like Forrest's prologue poem, life is a game of poker. That is very much the case here. And in poker, you're competing against your fellow players in a sense, but in a more real sense, you're engaged in a common activity that sharpens you, that makes you better, that helps you to think more clearly. Well, some people I know, it just increases their alcohol tolerance, but it's an activity that makes you a better person coming out of it than you were going into it.
Well, this is completely kind of, on the same subject, but a little bit deeper. When I came into the chase, my son has a pretty significant mental illness. So his behavior causes a lot of daily drama. So much so I am up all night long trying to pay attention to his behaviors. And since 2013, also I have a husband with PTSD and brain injury from Iraq. So there's a lot on my mind. That I was at night feasting on all the problems that I had all day long. Like, how am I going to... I'm a fixer. So I just stay up all night long. I'm worrying about how I'm going to fix this. I'm going to think about it and think about fixing it until I ran into Live, Thrill of the Chase. And what that did for me mentally was shift my focus from the drama, from the anxiety, the panic, the sleeplessness. I still was sleepless, but I was up all night reading about art. I was up all night reading about Native American history, mathematicians, Aristotle, gold, and I did that for 5 years. And when you look back on the things that I have learned, the education that I've given myself you couldn't find, there's no way you could have given me an education like that any other way, because it's driven by my own interests. It captures, you can give me 5 options of what I think this poem might be, but I'm going to choose the one that I'm interested in to read about for 4 hours. And then suddenly, what have I done? I have become a subject matter expert in the most random thing humanly possible. But you do that for 5 years. It took the anxiety. It didn't take it away. It refocused my energy. It was so, and I've written Forrest about this. It changed my life. It was better than any medicine that I could have taken.
Right.
Kept my mind active. It kept it. It de-stressed me, and It still does. It's my favorite subject to fall into, and just because that's what you do. You fall into it, and then you resurface 2 weeks later, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
that was a nice vacation from my bed.
Guilty. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
get
I hope other people are experiencing that that it's replacing bad habits, that it's replacing negative behaviors. Like, I mean, come on, there's some things that people do on the internet late at night that, we could be,
Yeah.
I think that it
Fortnite.
probably-
It's terrible. People fall into Fortnite and just disappear.
So what education, really at the end of the day, that's what I've done is learn stuff.
Yeah, and that means it's enriching, it's growth, it's self-awareness. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had exactly the same experience that you described with my time as well. And I think that's the part that I wish was emphasized a little bit more, maybe. Are the truly positive aspects of this. Excuse me, the chase, is it really for a box, or is it for the things that you're describing there?
Right.
Is the chase really for something encased in bronze, or is it something encased in us? And finding that, I know it sounds kind of goofy, maybe, existentialist or whatever, but I think it's important to think about. This thing changes you. And it's kind of like that movie, The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Have you ever seen that with Humphrey Bogart?
I don't think so, no.
Drop everything and go watch that movie. So it's about these guys that are, in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s, working as like oil riggers or something like that. They're, working men. And they go to work for this guy, this businessman, who promises them big pay, big benefits, all that stuff once they finish the job. Well, they all go out, get the job done. They come back into town with the guy, and the guy says, "Here, hold my bank book. I'm going to go down and get a drink, and then I'm going to go get your guys' money, and I'll be back here in a few." And he never comes back. And they're all at the bar going, "Where's so-and-so? We're waiting on so-and-so." And the one guy at the bar says, "Oh, you're waiting on him? Well, you're going to be waiting a long time, because that guy always does stuff like this. He takes you guys out, tells you he's going to pay you, and then disappears once you get the job done." So they're all bereft and broke, and they get turned on to this treasure of a gold strike in the Sierra Madre, out in the Mexican mountains. And so Humphrey Bogart and a couple other guys go out to look for this vein. And Bogart starts losing his mind. And actually, did you know that this is the movie, that famous line of, "Badges? We don't need no stinking badges." That's
I've heard that.
the movie. That's where this came from. Is Humphrey Bogart is out in the Mexican wilderness, and the Mexican police or military or just,
Right.
hitmen are out patrolling, and he runs into them and asks to see their badges. And anyway, it's all about Humphrey Bogart's slow descent into madness and what a danger he becomes to himself and to his friends, and how the pursuit of wealth can wreck a person. Just total obsession, total insanity. You begin to suspect everyone else of double-crossing you. You find a conspiracy around every Gila monster. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean.
Who exactly is Tim Kirk?
Yeah, what is he doing?
What
Is he playing me for inside knowledge? Yeah, it's like you get this negative response to the idea of riches and wealth, and that movie makes that very clear. On the other hand, the pursuit of something like this can be a very positive experience if you handle it the right way. And that's the big trick, is knowing what the dangers are going into it and conditioning your mind not only how to ride a bicycle backwards, but also how to become a better person through the chase as opposed to becoming Humphrey Bogart.
Well, if you put it in the perspective of a hobby versus a pursuit of wealth, other hobbies, you're golfing, you're not going out and, I was about to say hitting a home run, but that's...
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right sport.
It takes a practice. It's not something that you go and you're just the best at immediately
Right.
But I think that's a weird thing that's lost in the chase too, is but your destination is your entire focus, and I think that needs to shift a little bit. It might take you 20 different times, but every single time you're refining your skill.
Yeah. And, now that we've helped all of you approach this from a healthy human perspective, we're going to go ahead and tell you where to look so that you can find the treasure, because we want this to be, first, a positive human experience for you, and then we want it to be profitable so that you can look back and say you found the treasure because of our hints. So we're prepared. Are you ready, Beth, to tell them where it is? I'm ready. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Do it.
It's in Wyoming. Okay? Cody, Wyoming. Tell your friends.
Go there.
Yes, go there. But be healthy about it. Don't turn into Humphrey Bogart. Be good. That's where they come up with the term, don't Bogart my phone or whatever else. That's Sierra Madre, too. A lot of people haven't seen that movie and yet quote it all the time. It's bizarre. But yeah, Cody, Wyoming. Go there. Don't go anywhere else.
I'm going to Yellowstone this weekend for 3 days, but
not to search.
Not to search, but I would not reject the idea of seeing something that caught my attention and then running off a little bit. So,
the Firehole River.
Right.
A place called Ojo Caliente near Yellowstone. Go there. Spend all your time there.
That's funny.
You won't regret it. Right, Beth?
No, you won't. I'm taking my grandson so that they can get... they can't quite understand the thrill of the chase yet. They're little, but I want them to understand what being out in a place like Yellowstone...
Yeah, the majesty of the outdoors, right.
Once that captures a child, they seek it for the rest of their life.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something they turn away from. That's what I found to be the case once they connect to the magnitude of Yellowstone or, any of those national parks, really. But
right.
Once it's in there, it's in there.
Yeah, the draw of everything from mountains to canyons to Native American casinos. It's all right there in one cool experience, because I am like what you described. My parents took me to Grand Canyon and all places, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, growing up. And those were foundational experiences for me, of being outside, being out in those places. And like you said, you just gravitate right back to that.
I think it teaches children the magnitude of what is possible in their lives. I think it really does change the frame of their brain. If they see their hometown every year of their life and they don't see what the world, the majesty of the world, and then it's hard for them to see that same thing in themselves. And then so...
Yeah, and it makes it easier for them to find that in video games or on Netflix. A substitutionary thrill, if you will. Whereas this is like the real thing.
Yeah.
And you can't, once you experience it, video games are just a waste of time. I know that's how I feel. I played video games for a little while, certainly did growing up, but in my adult life, I just could not do it because it felt like such a waste of time. Whereas going out to the mountains or finding a meadow or a canyon and walking through it, I could do that all day, every day, and never feel like I'm wasting time.
Me too.
right?
Yep. So we've committed to taking our grandsons every couple of years to a different national park that inspires some sort of awe. Like on their odd birthdays, I mean, there's 4 of them now, so it's getting a little bit busy on the calendar, but that I want them to have that in these foundational years that they have, is that look what the earth has given us.
Yeah.
We don't need this phone, we don't need this TV. I mean,
Yeah.
the things that,
Well, the phones and computers and stuff are tools to connect us with what's real.
right.
They're not what's real in themselves. What's real is what's out there, and what you're describing is connecting them with the real so that they don't fall for
Right.
a substitute.
But I think the problem we're having right now is that we have stopped connecting them to the real,
Mm-hmm.
like hardly at all in some cases. And I'm not to criticize the Disneyland vacationers, but you're essentially putting a child into kind of a similar video game experience. Like the real is really important, and I think that's the value of the thrill of the chase, is that you get right back to what is real.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to go enjoy Disneyland. Now, Disneyland inspires imagination to a certain degree, but not nearly to the same degree as when you get a cardboard tube, 3 feet long, out in a meadow somewhere when you're a kid. Because that could be a telescope, that can be a sword, that can be a gun, it could be a shovel. I mean, the amount of imagination required, the outdoors obligate you to engage your imagination.
Right.
Disneyland and stuff, it's imaginary and it inspires imagination to a certain degree, but it's all prefabricated. It does not obligate you to do anything but enjoy. Whereas when you're out in the great alone, and something that I think every human being should be required to do is spend at least one night alone in the woods, because if you haven't been out in the woods alone, all by yourself for at least one night, you don't get it. You haven't lived. And that's something that you can't get through video games or Netflix or...
I had a blog for a long time. I tried to launch I don't even know if it would be a slogan, which was basically get out of the theme parks and into your national parks, because there's so much value there.
Yeah, and even the national parks. Like, I used to go to Zion growing up, and Zion to me was just a magical place. And now today, going to Zion, I can't go to Zion anymore because it's like going to Yellowstone. It's all RVs and buses, you have to, to get to Angel's Landing, you have to take a bus.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I remember when I was running up and down this road to get to Angel's Landing. Or, Yellowstone, same sort of thing there. You just can't.
I have found that to be different at Yellowstone. I've been there 3 times in the last, let's say 10 years, I guess. I think it's very easy to just pull away from that crowd that just goes down the one road, and everyone lines up and pulls over so they can take pictures of, the animal that's over on the side.
The buffalo standing there.
Right.
Who's tied to a stick.
But I've found it to be really easy to divert from that crowd and just get lost in Yellowstone.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Although we may have different definitions of alone. So I'll challenge everyone that some of the best places aren't maybe yet national parks.
So I think that's
There's some places out there that just are absolutely stunning. So one of them that I think no one really knows about is the Hayuwinta Wilderness. Have you ever been there?
Never even heard of it.
Okay, so this is a little science here for you. The Hayuwinta Wilderness is like the only east to west running major mountain range in America. So it's right where, how Utah has a panhandle and Wyoming sits right on top of it. It's just below the Wyoming line of that panhandle. The highest point in Utah is located there, Kings Peak. And it is a chain about 60 miles long of peaks and canyons and valleys and lakes. And there is hardly anyone out there because there's no roads out there. There's one road that runs up along the west side. That's where most people go. But if you walk, just a few hours east of that area, or if you drive up into Wyoming and come down one of the dirt roads to enter into the area, you are alone.
11 Mile Canyon out in Colorado is like that as well. It's one of the most beautiful places I have ever been. I don't think it's national. It's just a canyon. I mean, fluorescent fossil mounds, or beds. I don't know, beds.
Fossil beds, yeah.
Are a few miles away. That's also pretty remote. There's not a lot of people out there looking at those, but 10 or 15 miles down the road, 11 Mile Canyon. And I've been to beautiful places in Oregon and Colorado, Utah, wherever. It holds its own, and no one even knows of it. It's just a random canyon.
Yep. Those are the places to me that symbolize the epitome of what we're talking about, or pretty much the entire state of Alaska. I mean, there's that too.
And my thought about the thrill of the chase is if he has left it someplace like that, it's going to be someplace like that. Someplace he's stumbled across that it doesn't get a lot of traffic, gets some,
right.
But is absolutely stunning.
And that's why we're prepared to say that place is Cody, Wyoming. Just outside of Cody, Wyoming. You'll figure it out. Just take a look at the poem, get a good map, but don't look anywhere else. It's within 10 nautical miles of Cody, Wyoming. That's our big hint for the day.
Correct.
Right? Cody, Wyoming. Don't go anywhere else. All right. So have we pretty much covered our topic for the day?
We covered several topics. I think.
All right.
If we do it again, we're going to need a list of what we're actually talking about. Well,
yeah, right. Well, it's a good test anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we've proven, what we set out to prove. Unless you have anything else.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next time where we'll talk about Cody, Wyoming, where the treasure is, obviously, where it will be found in Wyoming, and also talk about why Beth takes her grandkids out to places like national parks, but
good.
Does not let them wear bright colored clothing.
Really?
Oh, no. Yes. Missing 411
right.
is a good counterbalance to this whole outdoor nirvana that we're talking about here.
Yes, I do.
Because you don't want to let your kids wear bright colored clothing ever in a national park.
Right. That's why we have an Airbnb this time. We camped last time in a teepee, but this time we're going to be locked inside Airbnb.
Doesn't help you. I'm here to tell you, no bright colors. I mean, even if you just buy one of those old military ponchos or something, I mean, anything will help, because whatever it is out there that's nabbing people looks for kids wearing bright colors. But we'll talk about that next time. Missing 411. David Paulides. Tell your friends. All right, so hit that button, Beth.
If we come back. All right, wait, what? I'm trying to, but...
Did it work?
No, the mouse isn't working.
Oh, click the mouse once.
Okay,
There you
good.
go.
Okay, good.
The battery goes off.
Good.